we go to our last team for today. That's Unlogged, who's also a sponsor. So Unlogged has been a champion with the Java user group for the past 6 months and more. I'll let Shardul take over without giving him much of time to introduce or catch up with all the way. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Savik. A lot of what I'm going to say is already covered by earlier presentations, but nonetheless, I'll introduce myself, just quickly cover what the problem statements are, and jump onto the demo. I don't want to take a lot of time. So we are in the business of automating regression testing, right? How we do that, what motivated us to do that, and how, like, what are the things to do. I'm going to cover that in my demo. So me and Parth, we've been working together for about 8-9 years now, and we've developed several production grade applications. And like a lot of what when we worked with QA teams, when we worked with product managers, when we worked with businesses, I think just one thing, it always is there. There's like an elephant in the room, where the speed of like execution is much faster at unit level, and but time it takes to write those tests is higher. Also, these unit tests are very fickle, which means what you wrote yesterday is not very relevant tomorrow. You got to keep changing them, you got to keep updating them. Obviously, even if you end up writing unit tests, you have to mock out a lot of things. Obviously, mocking is useful, but useful when other services are not available. There, like when you grow to a level of, say, where Swiggy is, it's impossible to have everything up and running all the time. So mocking is useful, but again, it does little help, because in a sense, you're only testing your own changes, and you're not really sure of what happens in an integrated fashion. So you got to deploy it somewhere, which means you have to test it in an integrated fashion. And again, which means you have to use some sort of a Newman CLI or some sort of an integration test suite as well. And then obviously a lot of times we have seen this trend picking up, which is of BDD, where like the QA really identifies the business flows, the user-driven flows, and then writes those tests at the UI level, or whatever. If they're comfortable at API, they do write it at API level, right? A lot of times we have also seen not investing in this. This is sadly, automation is not doing automation is slow poison, in the sense you start off as a team of 4 or 5 engineers, and you want to move really fast. Nobody gives a about somebody's writing unit tests or somebody writing integration tests or not. And say whatever you want to about TDD, nobody follows it. So 6 months, when your team is like 20 people, you are worrying about tech date and all those philosophical issues come, and then the only solution developers come up with is let's rewrite everything, right? That's always, and I don't know, in all the journeys we have seen, almost every single time architects used to put their foot down and say, man, this time you got to write unit tests, this time you have to cover. And obviously a week before, the architect, next time say please dekh lena, and that next time never ever happened, right? And this is a reality that prompted us to build something. And we were I think a lot of you already know. So we've been interacting with Cred. We've been working with, I think, Prashant. I'm also in touch with Prashant at Mo Engage, and we've been iterating, like he said, right? Like we've been trying to adopt to the tool, so to the user really, rather than just inventing something. So one philosophy we had was, if you see this, right, the pyramid, right? We said, look, it all boils down to one thing. As and how a developer is making change, they should know what's going to break almost instantly. So the turnaround time shouldn't be 10 hours, shouldn't be 1 week, shouldn't be like months at all. It should be like seconds. It should be 30 seconds. So how can we enable that? And then we started, like our journey started with auto-generating unit tests. Couple of you might have already known. So we were generating unit tests which were perfectly working. And then people were just able to run it. There's a customer of ours who's sitting in the back. It's called Ayu. So we generated a lot of unit tests for them, and we realized that their developers are not doing it on a continuous basis. They just ended up deleting those generated cases, and there was a very important learning for us, which was essentially, people don't want to maintain generated code. So the less amount of code there is, the better it is. So what we came up with was, how can we automatically record the input and output return values of every method? That was the first thing. The second, if a developer is making a change in one of the functions, how can we just hot reload just those changes into a running process, replay that method with the recorded inputs, observe the changes and assert their equalness or differences, right? And then basically commit these cases in the form of a JSON, which can be replayed over and over again, right? So our challenge was to make this JSON sort of committable inside your Git, so that every time a developer sort of does this, the next developer who pulls the code changes would be able to replay those cases, right? So with that, I'll jump on to the demo. The demo is very simple. I'm going to show you like a GCD of two numbers, and this GCD of two numbers is embedded at it's written at a service layer, and it's going to get called from Postman. There is a controller we have written called /GCD, and I want to show, and inside this GCD function, GCD of two numbers, we are also going to call an external API just to show you like how things are going to get covered, and I want to show you like how these cases can be saved and then committed to Git, right? So the way this works is there are two parts to this, right? You have to first install the plugin from IntelliJ IDEA. You just have to go to Preferences. You have to go to Plugins, go to Marketplace, and install this plugin called Unlogged. Since it's already installed, I'm not going to do that again. So we have about 2300 installs already. Once you do that, you will see this plugin from your right side like this. The first thing you have to do is you have to copy this dependency into your POM XML. So very simple copy paste into your POM XML, and that's it, right? There's nothing more. And once you do that, just like debug your code. Just run your code in debug mode. I don't know how many of you are aware of this thing called Lombok. I think the Java folks should be. So we have extended Lombok, and we are sort of inserting our probes to record function input and output in the compile time, so that the runtime is like the boot up time is not affected much. So let's see if this is up and running. So you can see that it started on port number 888. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to call this GCD controller call /GCD from Postman. And why I'm showing this is because you don't need to use or learn anything. You can just use your existing tools, right? So let me go to Postman. So this is that API /API/GCD, and I'm going to send 2022 trace ID as test, right? Before that, sorry, I just need to explain what it does. So let me go to this code GCD of two numbers. It just checks if n1 is not equal to n2 and calculates the GCD. And while it is doing that, it also calls this weather API. It just sends this weather info for Bangalore, right? So simple, like it's an external HTTP API. Why I'm showing you this is if you were to cover just this function from both unit as well as integration perspective, you'll have to unit test it and then mock this weather API, right? And our thing was that's just meaningless. So what can we do to sort of avoid that? So let's see. So you go to Postman, you go to this /GCD, and you just say send. Now what happens inside is basically you can look at this GCD controller, and this icon immediately turns to this pink targeted icon, which means that there is a recording available for calculate GCD here. Let's see how it looks like, right? So when I see, for this method is showing you the recording for 2022 test, right? Then when I go inside this GCD of two numbers, you can see another recording here, for which I'm just sending 2022, right? If you actually go inside this set get weather info, you will see a recording for this also. So whatever came from your API call and whatever code got executed, everything is recorded, every single method is recorded for its input and return values. Now, what's the use, right? So for example, if a developer is going to make change at this level, right? Say I'm going to say set GCD, but n2 plus 1. So what we tell you is instantly this icon changes to a bolt icon, right? What this bolt icon means is, hey boss, your code changed from the last recording. You got to replay it and check, like what's happening. So once you click this icon, we hot reload this change into a running process and then replay these previously recorded inputs and immediately tell you that, hey boss, there's something different. So you can check it and tell us if that's something meaningful or that's something that was intended, or you just can choose to save it, right? You can see a detailed view also, like it's there in Git. So basically it tells that this is the key of GCD 2 and 3 is different, right? The other thing I want to show you is also you can create multiple input and return values at a function level. So how can you do that? There's something called as direct invoke, for which you don't need to go to Postman or any external tool like Swagger and feed data. You can actually just go to direct invoke and just feed data here with manually, and you can just call this function directly and test it here. Again, whatever is called from direct invoke is also saved in the form of atomic test, right? Now, how can you save this as a artifact, test artifact? Simple. You just have to go here and then say save. It gets saved as a test case 1, and the saving happens inside your test folder and inside a folder called Unlogged. So you can git commit it every time the next developer installs it. They'll be able to replay the same tests and what's going to go wrong, right? So just hit this bolt icon and if the input and output return values for a method are same or not. So you can see the same here and different here, right? So there is there's a reason we did that, because it's going to cover every single code change that I have done, and it covers it in the form of unit as well as integration tests. There's nothing you need to do separately to write unit tests or to write integration tests at all. Why? Because these code changes are deployed into a running process, which means everything that happens from here on that gets tested automatically. So the beauty about this is it works seamlessly with other tools, which means you can deploy this on staging. It's just one simple dependency you have to add. You can also deploy it on several other, maybe if you have Sandbox or some other environments where there's a lot of data. So somebody was asking about how do you sort of populate real world data, and I think Prashant also covered, right? Mimicking the real world data is super important, and not just creating what you think is the data for a particular function or a feature, right? So idea is it happens automatically with this logging tool, right? Wherever you put it, you could be putting it on production, you could be putting on Sandbox staging. What this tool tells you is almost instantly if there's any test you are breaking or not, right? So I just want to take 1 minute and explain what these terms mean. So you might have seen these icons, red icon with slash and cyan color icon and this pink color icon. So this red icon with slash is basically your application is not running with the SDK. The cyan color means that the application is running with your SDK. The pink color means that the recording is available for input-output values for a function. This bolt icon means that, hey boss, something has changed, you got to run it. So that's like your indication for developers to just click that icon and run it. And this green tick means that even after your code change, there's no difference found. And this red not equals means that there's some assertion failing, so you got to check that. Direct invoke, like I said, you can call any Java feature, like any Java function directly, without exposing any HTTP endpoint. A lot of times what ended up happening is I am sitting deep inside my code where I'm making some changes at say DAO layer, and getting the HTTP endpoint itself from Postman sort of becomes a mental overhead. And I just want to make sure that like whatever I'm changing in the current function, I should get to know what are its implications. So let me quickly give you a demo of that as well. So for example, if I'm setting this set GCD to n2 plus set 2, right? What typically happens is in our testing workflows, I go to Postman and I send the controller level inputs to this function, and then I do F8, F8, F8 to come till here. What I'm going to do now is just put a debug point and then just click this button. And immediately you would see that while this change gets deployed, my debugging point starts right from here. I don't need to come from like a F8 journey till here. So I know what I'm debugging and I can jump to that point straight away. So you can see that, like the value of this set GCD was something, and now you can see that it has been set to 6 because, the original value was 4 and the +2 value is 6, right? So that's just an example of how powerful the testing could be with this tool. And the atomic test is where I showed you where you can, replay the previously saved inputs, and you can replay them as many number of times as you want. You can even individually replay certain inputs to check. So that's atomic test. I also showed this, like this JSON. So like I said, right, when you save this JSON, it is saved like a simple, for this function, these were the inputs, these were the outputs, and this was the latest result, this was the latest outcome. So git committed, the next developer who pulls these changes will get similar icons to their methods, and they can just keep invoking and keep using it seamlessly, right? So our philosophy is that unless everything is green, don't push your code. This is like the ultimate shift left philosophy of testing, right? Don't even bother git committing. So unless everything is green here, like unless every single thing is green, I'll show you how to sort of do that. Yeah, so 2 of 2 atomic tests pass, and unless all of this is green, the QA or their own tests or their own further things won't start, because this is ultimately telling you that for all previously recorded values, it's going to be same, or the results are expected from the developers, right? There's also some metadata we show here, and the idea is to move towards performance related use cases. So you could see the inlay hints here, where we are trying to also tell you, hey, there were 2 calls available, which were historically done for this GCD of 2 numbers. And the mean time, average time it took was 288.15 milliseconds. And if you added one more line, what is the deviation that's going to happen, right? So idea is to keep prompting you for every single line of code change you do, what are the implications? Hey boss, like just do what you're doing, knowing what you're doing, right? Simple. So you don't have to wait till some staging deployment or some UI test to run. I mean, when I heard 12,000 UI tests, it was like, my God, I don't know, for this feedback, that the same thing would take maybe hours to, get back to developers. But here they get to know that instantly. Yeah. So work is in progress where we could also create assertions around these return values, where you say, hey, if this starts with, equals with, this greater than or equal than, less than, it contains certain value, it has certain size, it has certain matches, or it even matches some regex. The other bit is mocking. We are going to offer that, so that even if the other service, other API is not available, you would be able to mock it. And so essentially, I know a lot of you don't take code coverage seriously, but that's still a metric to follow for a lot of people in their companies. Like Amazon follows this strict thing of 90% in their journeys, right? So we are going to come up with a feature where if you use direct invoke with certain inputs, we would highlight the lines where it's going to access. So you would still get a confidence of everything that's there in the code is covered properly. So we don't yet have a sample implementation. We got out of our mode of coming out to launch this SDK only 3-4 days back. So if any one of you is interested, we are happy to co-create this with you. Expected impact is it shoots up the code coverage to 90+% with least resources. Idea is to have literally have 0 regressions. Also go all the way till UI and say that, hey, even if you make a code change here in the backend, trigger that UI test that tells you, something is going to go wrong. And again, so like I said, it's both unit and integration. There's no test, there's no, there's no code you have to write to do that. There's no code to maintain. So a lot of people tell me that, hey, Codepilot or some Git Copilot is writing tests, right? So how are you different? What they don't get is this, that's a lot of code to maintain. There's no fun to write 10,000s of generated code, and when it comes to debugging it, not knowing what it does exactly. So it's like little ironical. You try to address tech debt by creating more tech debt, which nobody gets, right? So there's no code to learn. You can deploy knowing that everything is working perfectly well, and there's hardly any learning curve. Obviously, since I build the product, I'm saying that there's no learning curve, but probably there's lesser learning curve compared to learning entire test automation and related tools. Yeah, open for Q&A. Thank you. So currently Java, Scala, and Kotlin. I'd have my co-founder also come on stage, or just stay here maybe. But we are working on supporting Go, Python, and JavaScript. Work is in progress there. So this is Parth. He's stage shy, so he ended up coming here only for Q&A. He's the real brain behind figuring out how Lombok works and a lot of things. Yeah. There's one more team member we have. If you want to come on stage, Amuk. Okay. Say hi from there. Cool. Guys, any other Q&A?
How is the JSON maintained?
Who's asking? Yeah, JSON is in the form of maintained, as in it's maintained in this file called test resources unlogged. You can go and modify it also.
We can get data from production also.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how will that come into the...
Right, so that is yet to be built, but basically it will work exactly like it is working. You just add the dependency in your POM, and we will set some threshold as to, like maybe just log 1% or 0.1%. I mean, at Swiggy's scale, I don't know, maybe 0.01% or things like that, right? And you'll have that same replay options available here.
JSON also, does it record each method level report the information available in JSON or where it stores the information?
The information is available in JSON.
For every method?
For every method, yeah. So you can see it. Maybe there are few things that are relevant to us. Say GCD of 2 numbers, #2. This is how we understand this message DTO thing. But you can see method arguments as 20 and 22, return value is so and so, return value class name is so and so. So who created it? So maybe we want staging to automatically create test. I mean, all of that metadata is present here.
When it comes to multi-threading, it could be like method, like it could be different. How would we capture?
Maybe storing the thread information.
Yeah, so all threads data is captured independently, separately. So you'll see all of the method executions on all threads, and then you can choose to save one of them or all of them or none of them.
So by default it will be recorded.
Yeah, all of the threads will be recorded.
And replay, while the replaying, if any of the, we change the method, then you could replay.
Yeah, you can replay all of them, or you can just replay one single individual.
Okay, how is this getting the data from the production environment? Because on the production environment, as I understand, it's a dependency. So you are basically pushing data out from there, in the sense that at least there has to be a dedicated, some kind of a
Yeah, so there's going to be a pipeline which is pushing these logs from your production servers to...
In real time, like as it happened like 2 minutes before and you are seeing it here, but you would be able to create, there's also a sense of uniqueness among that. I mean, you don't want to have similar types of input return values for the same function, right? So it's going to take a pipeline to do that.
The reason I'm asking these questions is there's a tool called as lifeline.
Yeah.
Okay, they are doing something.
They're into time travel debugging.
Exactly, they're in time travel debugging. So they kind of capture the real-time snapshot, and then they have their own I think, mechanism to push things out.
Yeah.
So again, they are IDE integration based.
So again, the way Lightrun works is agent addition. यहाँ पे you have to just add SDK. Yeah.
So if you build a pipeline, how are you going to take on PI data?
Yeah. So we are already building those mockers. Essentially, if there is a card, if there is personally identifiable information, it would be sort of mocked out, meaning it would be duplicated. Not duplicated, but...
So there would be some annotation level of where you can define a scope of this particular data you actually want to exclude from the recording, because PI data, so you can maybe say like this whole function, whatever happens, I don't want to record this, or you can do like a exclude or a include kind of a scoping for including and excluding PI data.
Currently so this annotation will look something like this at Unlocked. That's it. All you have to do is this. We will come up with further annotations which says don't log or something similar.
There can be a scenario that we want to log certain parts of the inputs and certain parts of the outputs. So again, kind of pick and choose kind
Yeah,
of situation.
kind of addition of filters.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, they will come up in the implementation.
Subsequent implementation.
Yeah.
Yeah, guys.
Is there only a Maven plugin or are you supporting other build tools?
So Gradle, I think it's 2 days away. We are testing it. Maven, but yeah, I mean others we have not really yet tested.
It's on the roadmap.
Yeah.
Correct.
I mean, if you want something else, tell us. We'll make it happen.
What is the contract changes for an air method? So
Yeah.
what happens with this?
So contract changes are taken as a form of new method. Like we are not sort of tracking contract changes for a method. So for example, if you go and add another variable here, you will have to sort of rerun and create test for that.
That's fine, but what about the existing test? Will it cause a failure? Because
Yeah, it will not find the method it's meant to replace.
It wouldn't run at all.
Yeah.
So the methods are identified using the signatures. The
Yeah,
signature
yeah,
changes.
yeah,
You
yeah.
have to
Correct.
Yeah,
identify new
yeah,
ones.
yeah, that's right. I think we are doing overloading also, right?
Yeah, we added.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's say, for example, I taken a sample from production data, the 100 test cases, what we generated, and as a developer, I'm trying to merge to master, right? I can take the same payload and run it as part of the master node. And let's say there are some contract changes, and I override the data, because I know intentionally I made these changes, so that I can override the sample.
You can do that in JSON. I mean, it's right in your code, so you can do that, but it's not advised really. Why? Because the JSON also contains the results of these tests, etc. So it's easy to fool. But I can check whatever has changed. Yeah. Does it answer, or it's not what you're asking?
No, I understand that actually the number of the data is greater than the production, right? Let's say there are larger data, how will I look into these fields?
So there are like
For example,
10 test cases and you ran them, and how would you look into the fields as in like which are breaking the test cases?
basically I take the sample from production and just want to run as part of my master merge,
Right?
right? Because basically I want to say ki the problem with our functional testing is we have limited data which we tested.
Right?
Now I want to feed the entire sampling of production data, and now if in that case I need to go to, let's say it's 100 or 1000, what are the data, right?
Okay.
Now I need to go and analyze ki where exactly it fails,
Yeah.
right? Is there some way like I can do the filtering only this failed?
Yeah, okay. So filtering is not there right now, but yeah, we can add that.
So if I define the use case, it's like this, that let's say I have 10,000 combinations of data,
Yeah.
and I am running those 10,000 combinations as a, say, a direct invoke.
Yeah.
And now for those 10,000 combinations, I have said, if 500 of these fail, give me a report of those combinations. It's like a basically a data set against the huge data set. This is failed. Give me that report so that I can understand why these data sets are failing, not the other 9,500.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And also you can point out ki what exact parameter or something was this failed.
Right,
Details of that.
Where is the root cause?
Right. So right now it's not there. There's no filtering of any kind, but we can add that. Yeah, we will put it
It's
on the
like
roadmap.
basically doing kind of bulk, how do you say, data in based input. unit
Right,
testing
right.
kind of thing.
That's help the developer to reduce this timeline to find point.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
let's say I say I generate 10,000 and my code fails at 501, 601 and 701. Then it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah, you don't want to see the
So
other.
the other things, yeah.
Correct.
Fair. ठीक है. We'll think about
is
it.
it possible to have a separate JSON out for master merges? Let's say, kind of extending on this question only. So I have a production data, a large set of data. I don't want my developer to run all those tests. So can I just print out a JSON and run it at the time of let's say merge and if,
Yeah, that's Git branch. I mean, where you save and that's like up to you.
so the JSON doesn't have a
Yeah. No. See, here is the thing. You can choose not to commit this also. Just call direct invoke, create your own inputs, not to commit. That's okay. And let QA run only the production inputs. I mean, you can create such segregation also.
Just asking. So it's basically like QA can work on creating a test JSON, even your JSON contract, and they can create their own test data and they can use it as a.
Yeah.
Is that possible?
Yeah. Of course, it is.
So suppose recorded in traffic, production traffic, and we have been playing the well sandbox of any environment, local, so how did but JSON is not created, but it's recorded in a production, right?
Okay.
So does it that data, whatever the data is it having a return response value? How it will compare? Because I am running the
Right. So when you're getting the data from production, you have to like either bring out the logs to replay that,
Okay.
or you have this particular JSON file where you have explicitly saved these test cases to replay that. So in both the cases, when you're bringing these, the return values are also saved along with the input values.
So does it provide any interface to replay those data? So how how will we be playing that data to?
From the production.
Yes.
Right, so that pipeline is not yet built,
Yeah, it's
but
work in
there will
progress.
be a source where you can select, right? You pull the data from a staging environment or pull it from. Right now, it's all coming from the local environment.
So Abhi, this is like you're seeing only local. You'll get some sort of a login where you can basically then it will
You can
keep
pull
pulling.
the data
Yeah,
from
yeah.
your production.
Are you looking at pulling data from logs? Because that's a very
Yeah.
vast ecosystem because different companies use
No,
Yeah.
so these are not the normal
Yeah,
sound
yeah. We
logs.
need a bit
Right,
more
so
in
these
detail.
are different logs which we
Yeah.
are creating with.
You're planning to build it.
Yeah. No, not just that. See, typical, I mean, the logs that APM gives you or, all these people give you are super top level. Here we are going to a very minute level, like even a local change variable is what we are capturing, etc. So it needs to go through the journey once using us, using our this
So
thing.
basically, you are basically building that, I would say, data catalog in the production environment.
Yeah.
Then finding a way to pull it out
Yeah.
securely.
And then
then
put it to a
replay
pipeline
in
and
your
replay.
other-
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So maybe 1,000 controller level inputs on production might take 10 minutes to create these tests. So there's like a gap. There's no real time.
But all this data is stored in the production environment, or it's again in
No, no. So by the way, this is all self-hosted. So there's no unlogged
So
environment
this
at
going
all.
to be something like a log stash kind of a pipeline
Yeah.
where the logs are
Yeah.
reading on the disk and then push to S3 and then
Yeah.
we pull it.
Yeah.
Understand. Self-hosted, yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Because people will ask, where's my data going?
I like
Where-
that.
where-
It's going to be a
where is my
huge
production?
security
Yeah,
issue.
yeah.
Give you option to where to build data. You
Yeah.
can choose.
Yeah.
Will the production thing become an agent or still a plugin thing?
Just a plugin. Yeah, SDK. We moved on from agent some time back. I mean, people were not able to add this agent very easily. So what we said was, look, let's take an example of some analytics SDK company. Even the 2-year, 3-year junior developer is able to do that. So we rewrote the entire thing for the last 2-3 months, and this is where we are, where it has come to just a simple dependency addition, and that's it.
Just a data point here for, I think both for on-premise customers as well as SaaS, controlling something as an SDK is much more
Easier, yeah, than an
controlling
agent.
something as an agent.
Yeah, totally.
Because everybody effectively firewalls everything else.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So let's say like a method internally calls another method returns another task. Is there a way to track that movement?
Absolutely. So you're right. As a matter of fact, I missed telling about that feature. But we are going to come up with a tree feature where you can actually say this is how the journey went through, and even if you, for example, made a change at this GCD of 2 number functions, even the top level dependence, like whatever was the controller level function that called this, would get tested automatically. So you are actually very sure that everything in and out, like unit and integration, is combined in.
So everything in the chain
Yeah,
is
yeah.
going.
So we don't ever want that pyramid. It's like a straight line.
So like if QA's automation cases are running,
Yeah.
so we have the thing to get the code coverage. So that we will be getting a method from here to get this traveling
Yeah.
to based on the test cases that
Yeah.
QA return. So is there a way to get that map here
Yeah.
and run in that way?
Run in that way could be possible. I mean, we just have to
It's like
reuse
what you-
direct
what
and
you
work.
say- What they are saying is like when a user goes through a journey,
Yeah.
it's going through say a set of methods.
Yeah.
Now that's basically a user journey
Yeah.
in code language.
Yeah, yeah.
So what if we could import a user journey and run the,
Execute it
it's
at
like
a
it's
Yeah.
like don't it's like we for us to test, like example, I'm trying to find out, I've done a code change and my user journey earlier was
This?
5 seconds.
So how does that,
Now
yeah.
has it gone better or lower? So it's like
Yeah.
I'm importing a code user
Yeah.
journey into
In,
code
yeah,
life cycle
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of code.
Doable. That data is already with us. We have to implement a UI layer for
What I'm
that.
saying is that should be done because if dev test is in as unit test, they'll be
Yeah.
that, and that will be
It also helps the BDD way, right? Like you
Yeah,
know
no,
how.
it also helps the devs that
Recording would have some application impact on that, but we are yet to get into like actual number, rigid number which you can present, because it depends on what the user's code is trying to do, right? So if we have some test bed, which we actually do, and let's say I give you the application performance impact of that particular test bed to you, it wouldn't really mean much to you because what your application is doing is different from my test particular bed, right? So running the test. Okay. As much as your code takes, there is no overhead as such. So there's
So
a
there are two parts to this, maybe what you're, and I don't know, just correct me if I'm wrong, but the recording bit is different and replaying bit is different, right? Like, so replay is happening into a running process. When I actually click this replay all, that's where there's no overhead at all. It's the recording bit where we add probes and we actually record what is happening inside your code. That has a genuine impact, and that's what Parth is talking about.
so the time involved would be as much as your code is taking. There is nothing apart from that which is happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if you look at it, I understand you doing it for unit test, right? If you look into the, you can also look into the user journey with the trace ID. You can pick up that. You can also build for integration automation as well.
It is already
Right.
there for integration.
So it is difference between unit test and integration test is if you're mocking out the third-party services or not, right? So we'll have both the cases where you can select if you want to mock out these dependency calls. So if you mock it out, it's a unit test. If you don't mock it, then it's an integration test.
And no extra code. By the way, if I were to give you a little bit of background as to how this is working, so behind we are using reflection. So we figure out for GCD of two numbers what are the like what is the class that needs to be instantiated, what are the data points that need to be injected, what is the constructor need. We are doing all of that automatically and calling this. So it enables us to call the function as it is without mocking, etc.
No, but the question is, you're asking the user input from the whether it needs to be mocked or not mocked, right?
Yeah.
What I was trying to say, based on the environment is created, right? You can figure out whether that service is deployed or not, right?
Oh,
Then
yeah,
based on that
yeah.
you can mock it.
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
you have to take this?
That could be smart.
Potentially you can do
Smart
so.
enough. What, up to little enough.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be very smart.
Yeah,
But
that's where it becomes smarter.
yeah.
Yeah.
and yeah, actually even I remember somebody was asking about spawning of MySQL instance. Was it to you as well, right?
Yeah.
So for example, if you have test continues available which is readily probing that and giving a response, you are
Exactly.
effectively having
Get the
everything
request,
available.
no need to mock. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it takes that decision
Yeah,
automatically.
you take decision automatically.
It's like one less human.
Yeah,
One less
intervention.
human intervention.
Right.
That is effort.
Thanks, Anand. Yeah. Any other questions? Sorry?
What about?
Messaging things and all that. Does it take care of?
I didn't get the
Against
question.
The question.
Some of the
No, just take the mic. No, we need the mic.
I'm just asking what about the asking mechanism? Like suppose my service only listen to few of the messages like Kafka message or RabbitMQ or something kind of thing. Does it also listen to that separately?
Right. So in terms of your application code, it's a matter of there's this function which is going to be called from somewhere, right? So if you're listening to a queue, for example, right? So there is a QSDK which is actually having a TCP connection and actually calling your function, right? So we start to get involved as soon as your function gets called, right? So
On the method level.
correct, on the method level. So whatever is calling your method, it could be the SDK, it could be Postman, or it could be the direct invoke, right? As soon as your method gets invoked, we'll record the parameters and the return value, whatever is happening, and that's the scope of the test.
So you should not worry about it, whether it's like API or gRPC.
No, no.
Correct, it could be coming from anywhere. It could be gRPC or protobuf or REST or MySQL, could be some random protocol.
And anybody else?
Neeraj. We have Neeraj from Browser Stack.
But I'm not a tech.
Okay.
Cool guys, thank you.
Thank you very much.
You'll be hanging around. There are any further questions? Hey, so if you are bored, we have lunch. So,
We're not letting you go.
so it's on 4th floor, and we would be announcing the winner right after lunch. So what's the time right now?
1:30.